Imagine for a moment an old, forgotten library tucked away in some dusty corner of the world. In this library, there are books written on scrolls, on parchment, in languages no longer spoken. What if, among these ancient texts, there was one book that stood out, a book whispered about in hushed tones, even mentioned in the Bible itself? A book that supposedly held secrets about angels who fell from grace, giant beings who roamed the earth, and even the very blueprint of the universe. What if this book was thought to be too dangerous, too wild, or just too strange to be included in the religious texts we know today? This isn't a fantasy story. This is about a real book, one with a long and complicated history. We're talking about the Book of Enoch. If you've spent any time looking into ancient history or religious mysteries, you've probably heard its name. It's an old Jewish religious work, a true relic from a time long past. The book itself claims to be written by Enoch, who was Noah's great-grandfather. That places it way back in the early days of human history, even before the great flood that many ancient cultures talk about. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Most Bibles you'll find today don't include the Book of Enoch. It's not part of the official collection, what scholars call the canon, for most major religious traditions. But don't let that fool you into thinking it's unimportant. Quite the opposite. Back in its day, it was incredibly popular and influential. Think about that for a second. An ancient text attributed to a figure who lived thousands of years ago, widely read and respected, yet largely missing from our modern understanding of religious history. It's a bit like finding a major piece of a puzzle that someone decided to hide away. So, why isn't it in your Bible? This is the million-dollar question, and it's where the real mystery of the Book of Enoch begins. Was it deliberately kept out? Was it simply lost to time, only to be rediscovered centuries later? Or was the content just too controversial, too much of a challenge to the established beliefs of the time? These questions have puzzled scholars and religious thinkers for centuries, and they continue to spark debate even today. The Book of Enoch offers a glimpse into a very different understanding of the world, one filled with celestial beings, cosmic journeys, and a detailed story about the origins of evil that goes far beyond what's written in the first few chapters of Genesis. It provides a rich tapestry of mythology and theology that was once central to many ancient Jewish communities. Imagine a time when people believed angels could come down to earth, marry human women, and create a race of giants. This isn't just a side note, it's a core part of the story Enoch tells. The fact that it's missing from most modern Bibles doesn't mean it wasn't important. In fact, its exclusion often makes it even more fascinating. It points to a time when religious texts were still being debated, when different ideas about God, angels, and the universe were all competing for acceptance. The Book of Enoch represents one of those ideas, a powerful and compelling one that, for various reasons, didn't make the final cut for most traditions, but its influence, even from the shadows, was significant. It was quoted by early Christian writers, and some of its ideas even show up in the New Testament. Think about that for a moment. A book that's not officially part of the Bible, yet its words and concepts found their way into the very fabric of early Christian thought. This isn't just some obscure, forgotten text. It's a foundational document for understanding a crucial period in religious history. It sheds light on what people believed, what they feared, and what they hoped for, long before the religious landscape solidified into what we recognize today. The Book of Enoch isn't just a collection of old stories, it's a living testament to the human search for meaning, the desire to understand the divine, and the struggle to make sense of a world that often felt both miraculous and terrifying. It's a book that dared to answer questions that the canonical texts only hinted at, delving deep into the origins of evil, the nature of angels, and the ultimate fate of humanity. Its enduring fascination comes precisely from its status as an outsider, a voice from the past that challenges our assumptions and invites us to look deeper into the foundations of our beliefs. It makes us wonder what other secrets might be hidden in plain sight, waiting for us to rediscover them. The story of Enoch, as told in the Book of Enoch, really starts with just a few lines in the Bible, in Genesis 5. It's almost a throwaway detail, but it's packed with meaning if you know what to look for. Genesis 5:21-24 says, Enoch lived 65 years and begot Methuselah. After he begot Methuselah, Enoch walked with God 300 years and had sons and daughters. So all the days of Enoch were 365 years, and Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him. This short passage is really unusual. Most people in Genesis 5 just live, have kids and die. But Enoch is different. He walked with God, which already sets him apart. And then, the biggest mystery, he was not, for God took him. This isn't just saying he died. It implies something special, something extraordinary happened. He didn't experience death in the same way everyone else did. This brief mention in Genesis is the launchpad for the entire elaborate narrative found in the Book of Enoch. It takes this tiny biblical hint and blows it up into an epic tale of cosmic journeys, divine revelations, and angelic drama. It sets the stage for Enoch to be more than just an ancient patriarch. It makes him a unique figure chosen by God for a special purpose. This is where the Book of Enoch steps in to fill those huge gaps, giving us a detailed account of what it meant for Enoch to walk with God and where exactly God took him. To understand the world Enoch lived in, we need to picture the time before the Great Flood. Genesis describes this period as increasingly corrupt and violent. Humanity was going downhill fast. The Bible mentions Nephilim in Genesis 6:4, saying, "There were giants on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God came in to the daughters of men, and they bore children to them. Those were the mighty men who were of old, men of renown." This is a really cryptic verse in Genesis. It hints at a strange mingling of divine and human, resulting in these powerful, infamous figures. The Book of Enoch takes this cryptic verse and expands on it, giving us a much fuller and frankly wilder explanation for the Nephilim and the overall wickedness that led to the flood. It paints a picture of a world spiraling out of control, where the lines between heaven and earth were blurred in a destructive way. This is the backdrop against which Enoch's story unfolds. A world ripe for divine judgment, and a world that needed a messenger like Enoch to understand what was really happening. And here's where the Book of Enoch really gets into the thick of it: the Watchers. This is the central, most dramatic part of its narrative. It tells the story of a group of angels, referred to as Watchers, who descended to earth. These weren't just any angels. They were powerful beings, and their intentions were anything but heavenly. The Book of Enoch names some of them, like Jasher, who was their leader, and Azazel, another prominent figure. Their motivation was simple and very human: lust. They looked down from heaven and saw the beautiful human women, and they desired them. The text explains that these Watchers made a pact, swearing an oath to carry out their plan, knowing full well the consequences. They descended onto Mount Hermon, which is a real place, adding a touch of geographical grounding to this fantastical story. Once on earth, they took human wives, and this act was the first major transgression. It wasn't just about forbidden relationships. It was about crossing a fundamental boundary between the divine and the human, disrupting the natural order of creation. But their sin didn't stop there. Beyond just marrying human women, these Watchers also taught humanity forbidden knowledge. Jasher, for instance, taught enchantments and root cuttings, Azazel taught men how to make weapons of war like swords and shields, and how to craft ornaments, makeup, and precious stones for women. He also revealed the secrets of metallurgy, how to extract and work with metals. Other watchers taught astrology, the signs of the sun, the moon, and the stars, and even how to write. This wasn't just practical knowledge. It was knowledge that was meant to be kept from humanity, knowledge that corrupted them. It led to an increase in wickedness, violence, and immorality on earth. The Book of Enoch argues that this forbidden knowledge, given by the Watchers, was the true source of humanity's corruption before the flood. It wasn't just that humans were inherently sinful. They were taught how to be sinful, how to create instruments of destruction and vanity. This act of teaching forbidden knowledge, alongside their illicit unions, is what truly set the stage for the catastrophic events that followed. The Watchers were not just observers, they were active participants in the downfall of the antediluvian world, directly contributing to the moral decay that God ultimately chose to cleanse with the Great Flood. Their motivations were selfish, their actions destructive, and their legacy, as described in the Book of Enoch, was one of profound corruption and chaos. The acts of the Watchers went beyond just taking human wives and teaching forbidden crafts. Their transgressions were deep and wide, poisoning the very fabric of early human society. It wasn't just about showing people how to make a sword or how to wear jewelry. It was about introducing tools and concepts that fundamentally altered human behavior, pushing them towards vanity, conflict, and a disconnect from the natural order that God had established. The Book of Enoch details these sins with a stark clarity, painting a picture of a world rapidly unraveling due to this angelic interference. Think about it. Azazel, for example, taught humans how to make weapons of war. Before this, conflict might have been rudimentary, but with swords, shields, and breastplates, battles became far more lethal. This wasn't just about self-defense. It was about organized, large-scale violence. He also taught the art of making cosmetics and ornaments. This might seem harmless on the surface, but in the context of the Book of Enoch, it's presented as leading to seduction, deceit, and an unhealthy obsession with outward appearance over inner virtue. Women were taught to beautify their eyelids with antimony, to use precious stones and all sorts of dyes. This led to excessive adornment, to the point where it corrupted their ways. The text implies a direct link between these teachings and the rise of immorality and sexual promiscuity. Semjaza, the leader, focused on different kinds of secrets. He taught enchantments and root cuttings, which sounds like early forms of magic or sorcery. This wasn't just about herbal remedies, it was about manipulating unseen forces, dabbling in practices that were strictly forbidden by the divine order. Other Watchers taught astrology, the observation of stars and celestial bodies, not for understanding God's creation, but for divination and predicting the future, which is another form of forbidden knowledge. They revealed the signs of the sun, the moon, and the paths of the stars, not for scientific study, but for practices that would lead humanity away from God. There was also the teaching of writing, which, while useful, was also presented as a tool that could be used for evil, for recording spells or corrupt knowledge. The ethical implications of this knowledge were severe. It wasn't just neutral information, it was knowledge with a dark purpose, designed to empower humanity in ways that were not meant for them, and which they were not spiritually equipped to handle. This forbidden knowledge, the Book of Enoch argues, stripped away humanity's innocence and accelerated their moral decline. It created a society obsessed with material gain, power, and sensual pleasure, leading to widespread injustice and corruption. People became self-sufficient in a dangerous way, believing they could control their destinies and manipulate the world without divine guidance. This was the ultimate transgression, teaching humanity to play God, or at least to disregard him, by giving them tools that led to spiritual blindness and depravity. And from these illicit unions between the Watchers and human women came the most terrifying consequence, the Nephilim. These were the giants, the monstrous offspring of this unholy alliance. The Book of Enoch describes them in vivid, disturbing detail. They were not just tall, they were gigantic, towering beings with an insatiable hunger. Their appetites were immense, and they quickly consumed all the provisions that humanity could produce. When they ran out of food, they turned on humanity itself. The text says that they began to devour men and birds and beasts and reptiles and fish. They drank blood. This paints a picture of monstrous, cannibalistic beings that brought terror and destruction wherever they went. The Nephilim were not just physically destructive. Their very existence was a corruption of the natural order. They were a hybrid race, neither fully divine nor fully human, a perversion of creation. Their presence on earth was a constant source of violence, chaos, and suffering. They oppressed humanity, causing immense distress and grief. They were depicted as cruel, merciless, and utterly devoid of any moral compass. Their destructive nature wasn't just a side effect, it was their essence, a direct consequence of their unnatural birth. They filled the earth with bloodshed and injustice, pushing humanity to the brink of despair. The Book of Enoch emphasizes that the earth itself began to suffer under this burden. The violence, the bloodshed, the corruption, the cries of the oppressed, it all accumulated, causing the earth to literally groan under the weight of such wickedness. The text says that the earth cried out, "The earth is defiled, and cries to me of the violence of its inhabitants." This isn't just a metaphor, it's presented as the earth itself, a living entity, appealing to God for justice. The blood of the slain, the tears of the suffering, the defilement of the land by the Nephilim, and the Watchers' teachings, it all rose up as a collective lament. This cry for justice from the earth and its inhabitants reached the heavens. The archangels, Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, and Uriel observed the immense suffering and heard the earth's lament. They saw the great quantity of blood shed on earth and all the lawlessness being committed. They brought the matter before God, describing the corruption that Azazel had taught, the wickedness that Semjaza and his companions had brought upon the world, and the violence of the Nephilim. This cosmic appeal for intervention is what sets the stage for God's ultimate decision to cleanse the earth. The divine intervention wasn't arbitrary. It was a response to an overwhelming tide of evil that threatened to consume all of creation, a direct consequence of the Watchers' sins and the destructive nature of their giant offspring. The stage was set for a monumental judgment, a divine reckoning that would reset the course of existence. The earth's desperate plea for divine intervention did not go unanswered, but before the monumental judgment could unfold, there was a critical need for an intermediary, a messenger who could bridge the gap between the corrupted world and the heavenly realms. This is where Enoch steps into his most significant role. He wasn't just a prophet. He was chosen by God to be a scribe, a record-keeper of cosmic events, and a direct messenger to both humanity and the rebellious Watchers. Enoch was deemed worthy, not because of any special power, but because he walked with God, a phrase that suggests a deep, personal connection and unwavering faith in a world spiraling into chaos. He was to bear witness to the divine plan, to see things no other human had seen, and to record them for future generations. His journey began not with a simple vision, but with actual heavenly travels. The Book of Enoch describes how angels took him, lifting him from the earth and carrying him through vast, celestial landscapes. These were not mere dreams or symbolic visions. They were described as physical, immersive experiences where Enoch was transported to different parts of the cosmos. He wasn't just observing from afar. He was moving through the very fabric of creation, guided by angelic beings who unveiled the universe's hidden mechanics. This wasn't just a trip, it was an education, a profound immersion into the divine order that had been so severely disrupted on Earth. During these journeys, Enoch became the ultimate cosmic tourist, shown things that would fundamentally reshape his understanding of reality. He witnessed the cosmology of Enoch, a detailed and complex description of the universe that far exceeded any human understanding of the time. He saw the vastness of heaven, not as a single place, but as a series of chambers, realms, and divine courts. He observed the places prepared for the righteous and the holding places for the wicked. He was shown the true nature of the firmament, the great expanse above the earth, and how it functioned. He learned about the movements of the stars, the sun, and the moon, not as random celestial bodies, but as entities governed by divine law, each with its own path and purpose. The angels explained to him the intricate calendar of the heavens, the cycles of seasons, and the precise timing of cosmic events, all ordained by the Creator. This was a universe far more orderly and complex than anyone on Earth could imagine, a stark contrast to the disorder below. Enoch's visions extended beyond just the physical structure of the cosmos. He was given a privileged view of the spiritual dimensions, the angelic hierarchies that maintained the order of the universe. He encountered holy angels, beings of immense light and power, who served God directly and carried out his commands. He met the archangels like Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, and Uriel, who had brought the earth's lament before the divine throne. These beings were not just figures of myth. They were active participants in the cosmic drama, each with specific roles and responsibilities. Enoch learned about their ranks, their duties, and their unwavering loyalty to God. But his journeys also took him to darker places. He was shown the abodes of the condemned watchers, those rebellious angels who had abandoned their posts and corrupted humanity. He saw them bound in chains, held in dark, desolate places, awaiting their final judgment. These were not abstract concepts. Enoch saw their suffering, their despair, and the consequences of their rebellion. He witnessed the profound justice of God, where even powerful angelic beings could not escape accountability for their actions. These visions served as a potent warning, a clear demonstration of the severe penalties for defying divine will. The contrast between the perfect order of the heavens, maintained by loyal angels, and the chaos below, caused by fallen angels, was a powerful lesson for Enoch. He was learning the true nature of good and evil, obedience and rebellion, and the immense stakes involved in the cosmic struggle. The detailed descriptions in the Book of Enoch of these celestial realms, the movements of heavenly bodies, and the angelic orders were revolutionary for its time. They offered a window into a divine perspective, a cosmic blueprint that explained not only the origins of evil, but also the ultimate destiny of all creation. Enoch was not just a passive observer. He was actively engaged, asking questions, receiving explanations, and meticulously recording everything he saw and heard. He was the chosen witness, the one who would bring these profound cosmic secrets back to humanity, even if much of humanity wouldn't be ready to hear them. His role as scribe was paramount, as these records would serve as a testament to God's justice and foresight. Enoch wasn't just observing, he was actively receiving messages about what was to come. He was given prophecies, clear warnings about the future, especially about the Great Flood. He saw how this massive event would cleanse the earth, washing away the corruption brought by the Watchers and their giant offspring. He understood that this wasn't just a random disaster, but a direct consequence of the world's wickedness, a divine response to the cries of the earth itself. He saw the details of the destruction, the despair of those who had ignored the warnings, and the ultimate justice that would prevail. The flood was presented not as an end, but as a necessary purification, a reset for humanity. Beyond the flood, Enoch's prophecies extended to the eventual judgment of the Watchers. He saw their fate, bound in the dark places, awaiting a final, inescapable reckoning. This wasn't a quick, simple punishment. It was a long, drawn-out consequence for their rebellion. He saw the fire and the deep pits prepared for them, a stark contrast to the heavens he had just visited. These visions hammered home the idea that no act of defiance against God would go unpunished, no matter how powerful the being committing it. It was a clear message that divine justice was absolute and would eventually encompass all wrongdoers. But Enoch's visions weren't all about punishment and destruction. He also received prophecies of hope and restoration, particularly about a figure who would come to set things right. This was a significant part of his message, the prophecies about the Son of Man. This wasn't a casual mention. It was a detailed description of a powerful, righteous figure who would emerge to judge the world and rule forever. Enoch saw this Son of Man sitting on a throne of glory, judging both the living and the dead, separating the righteous from the wicked. This figure was depicted as pre-existent, chosen by God before creation, and destined to reveal all the hidden treasures of wisdom and truth. The descriptions of the Son of Man in the Book of Enoch are striking because they present a clear messianic figure. He is called the Elect One, the Righteous One, and the Messiah. He is the one who will bring justice to the oppressed, raise the fallen, and establish a new eternal kingdom where righteousness dwells. Enoch saw him as the ultimate embodiment of divine authority, someone who would execute God's judgment with perfect fairness and then usher in an era of peace and truth. This concept of a divine, pre-existent, judging and reigning messianic figure is incredibly important. Many scholars have pointed out the uncanny parallels between Enoch's Son of Man and the descriptions of Jesus Christ in the New Testament. It raises questions about how much the Book of Enoch influenced early Christian thought and the development of Christology. Enoch's visions provided a comprehensive view of what would happen to the wicked, both human and angelic. He saw the specific places of punishment, described in vivid and often terrifying detail. These weren't just abstract concepts of hell. They were tangible realms of suffering, designed to fit the specific sins committed. For humans, there were places of torment, where their souls would await final judgment, experiencing varying degrees of pain based on their earthly deeds. For the Watchers, the prisons were even more severe, reflecting the greater responsibility they held as divine beings who deliberately chose to rebel. These vivid depictions of punishment gave people a concrete idea of ancient Jewish eschatology, the beliefs about the end times, judgment, and the afterlife. It showed a world where actions had eternal consequences, where every choice was weighed, and where divine justice was meticulous and inescapable. The Book of Enoch painted a picture of a universe where there was no escaping accountability, where even the most powerful beings would eventually face the consequences of their rebellion. It offered a detailed roadmap of the spiritual geography of the afterlife, explaining where souls went after death and what awaited them based on their lives. Enoch's role was to record all these prophecies and visions, ensuring that future generations would have access to this critical information. He was a messenger of both warning and hope, delivering news of impending judgment, but also promising a future Redeemer who would set all things right. His prophecies were meant to guide humanity, to call them back to righteousness, and to prepare them for the coming changes. He understood the weight of these revelations and the importance of preserving them accurately. The information he gathered wasn't just for his immediate family or community. It was for all who would come after, a blueprint of divine judgment and ultimate salvation. The Son of Man prophecy, in particular, stood out as a beacon of hope amidst the grim warnings of impending doom, offering a clear path towards redemption and a righteous future. This comprehensive prophetic vision, from the flood to the final judgment and the promise of a messianic figure, formed a core part of Enoch's sacred task. The Book of Enoch, despite its profound influence and detailed prophecies, eventually faded from common knowledge in the West. For centuries, it was largely forgotten, a whisper of an ancient text that few had ever seen. It vanished from most libraries and religious canons, becoming a lost treasure of antiquity. That was until the 18th century, when explorers and scholars, venturing into the ancient lands of Ethiopia, made a remarkable discovery. They found complete copies of the Book of Enoch preserved within the Ethiopic Orthodox Tewahedo Church. This church had, for reasons still debated by scholars, maintained the book as part of its biblical canon, safeguarding it through the millennia. The rediscovery of the Ethiopic text was a monumental event. It brought back into the light a work that had been foundational to many early Jewish and Christian beliefs. Suddenly, scholars had access to a complete version of this mysterious text, allowing for deeper study and analysis. This wasn't just a few fragments. It was the entire narrative, offering a full picture of Enoch's journeys, prophecies, and cosmic visions. It confirmed that the stories and ideas that had been hinted at in other ancient texts were indeed part of a much larger, cohesive work. The Ethiopic version became the primary source for understanding the Book of Enoch, opening up new avenues for biblical scholarship and historical research. Then, in the mid-20th century, another incredible discovery further solidified the book's ancient origins and widespread appeal. In 1947, the Dead Sea Scrolls were found in the caves of Qumran. Among these thousands of ancient manuscripts were several Aramaic fragments of the Book of Enoch. This was huge. It wasn't just a confirmation of the book's existence. It provided evidence that different parts of Enoch were circulating in the Holy Land long before the Ethiopic text was copied. The Qumran fragments showed that the Book of Enoch was actively read, studied, and revered by certain Jewish sects, most notably the Essenes, who were believed to have inhabited the Qumran community. The discovery at Qumran was important for several reasons. First, it pushed back the known date of the book's composition, confirming its antiquity. The Aramaic fragments were centuries older than the Ethiopic copies, proving that the book's core narratives were indeed ancient Jewish traditions. Second, it demonstrated the book's widespread use among certain groups in the Second Temple period. This wasn't some obscure text known only to a few. It was a significant religious work for a segment of the Jewish population, including groups like the Essenes, who held unique theological perspectives. The fragments contained sections dealing with the Watchers, the Nephilim, and Enoch's celestial journeys, aligning perfectly with the Ethiopic version and adding another layer of authenticity to the text. The impact of these discoveries on early Christian and Jewish reception cannot be overstated. Before the rediscovery, the Book of Enoch was largely a mystery to Western scholars, known mostly through references in other ancient texts. But with the Ethiopic version and the Qumran fragments, a clearer picture emerged. We now know that the Book of Enoch was widely known and respected in the centuries leading up to and immediately following the time of Jesus. Its ideas about angels, demons, judgment, and the Messiah were part of the common theological landscape. Perhaps the most compelling evidence of its early influence comes from the New Testament itself. The Epistle of Jude, one of the shortest books in the New Testament, directly quotes from the Book of Enoch. Enoch, the seventh from Adam, prophesied about them. "See, the Lord is coming with thousands upon thousands of his holy ones to judge everyone, and to convict all of them of all the ungodly acts they have committed in their ungodliness, and of all the defiant words ungodly sinners have spoken against him. This direct quote is undeniable proof that the author of Jude considered the Book of Enoch to be an authoritative prophetic text. Beyond Jude, there are numerous allusions and parallels between the Book of Enoch and other New Testament writings. Concepts like the Son of Man, the description of fallen angels chained in darkness, and the idea of a final judgment all have strong echoes in the Gospels and other epistles. This suggests that the early Christians were very familiar with Enoch's teachings and incorporated many of its concepts into their own understanding of salvation history and eschatology. It wasn't just a random book, it was a part of their theological framework. Early church fathers also referenced the Book of Enoch. Writers like Tertullian and Irenaeus, influential figures in the early centuries of Christianity, quoted from it and treated it as a legitimate, even inspired work. Tertullian, for example, defended its authenticity and saw it as divinely inspired scripture, especially for its warnings against idolatry and its descriptions of the fallen angels. This shows that for a significant period, the Book of Enoch was not only known, but actively accepted and integrated into Christian thought. However, despite this initial widespread acceptance, the Book of Enoch eventually declined in popularity and was gradually excluded from the canons of most Jewish and Christian traditions. While it remained canonical in the Ethiopic Church, it slowly disappeared from the mainstream, becoming a forgotten relic for centuries. This shift raises important questions about why such an influential text, once revered and quoted, fell out of favor. Its journey from a widely read and quoted text to a largely unknown one is a testament to the complex process of canonization and the theological debates that shaped religious traditions. The story of its rediscovery is not just about finding old texts. It's about uncovering a critical piece of religious history that reshapes our understanding of ancient beliefs and the development of sacred scripture. So, with all that history, all that influence we just talked about, the big question still hangs in the air. Why was the Book of Enoch excluded? Why did it fall out of favor with most Jewish and Christian religious leaders, eventually disappearing from their official scriptures? It's not a simple answer, but it boils down to several key factors that piled up over time, pushing it to the margins. One major reason was theological controversy. The Book of Enoch introduced a lot of ideas that, while perhaps accepted at one point, started to rub against the grain of developing orthodox beliefs. For instance, its highly detailed angelology, the extensive descriptions of angels, their names, their roles, and especially the fallen watchers, was far more elaborate than what was found in other biblical texts. While the Bible mentions angels, Enoch goes into incredible detail, almost creating a whole new universe of angelic beings and their interactions with humans. This level of detail, particularly concerning evil spirits and their origins, might have been seen as too speculative, too open to misinterpretation, or simply too much. It might have been considered a distraction from the core messages of God's direct relationship with humanity. Then there's the issue of explicit descriptions of demons and their hierarchy. While the New Testament acknowledges demonic forces, Enoch lays it all out, naming specific demons, detailing their functions, and explaining how they came to be. This could have been viewed as giving too much power or focus to evil, potentially leading to practices that were deemed dangerous or superstitious by religious authorities. The goal was often to simplify and centralize worship, not to delve into complex, potentially frightening classifications of supernatural entities. Its distinct cosmology also played a role. Enoch describes a very specific, almost mechanical view of the heavens, the movements of stars, and the structure of the universe. While fascinating, These descriptions often went beyond or even contradicted simpler biblical accounts. As religious doctrines solidified and interpretations of creation became more standardized, Enoch's unique cosmic visions might have been seen as outliers, perhaps even as drawing too much from non-Jewish or pagan ideas about the cosmos. The push was for a unified understanding, and Enoch offered a view that was perhaps too complex or too different. Another significant factor was authorship and authenticity. The Book of Enoch is what's called a pseudepigraphical text. This means it's attributed to a famous figure from the past, Enoch in this case, but was not actually written by him. It was likely composed much later, probably between the 3rd century BCE and the 1st century CE. While this was a common practice in ancient writing, attributing works to revered figures to give them authority, it eventually became a problem for religious leaders trying to establish a definitive canon. As the criteria for what counted as inspired scripture became stricter, texts that were clearly not written by their named author began to be viewed with suspicion. If it wasn't genuinely from Enoch, how could it be fully trusted as divine revelation? This question became a major hurdle for its inclusion. The issue of syncretism, or the blending of religious beliefs, also likely contributed to its exclusion. Some scholars argue that certain elements in the Book of Enoch show traces of influence from surrounding pagan mythologies, particularly Persian ideas about angels, demons, and the cosmic struggle between good and evil. While ancient cultures often borrowed and adapted ideas, for religious leaders trying to maintain the purity of their faith, anything that looked too much like outside influence could be a red flag. They wanted to ensure that their scriptures were distinctly Hebrew, or later distinctly Christian, without significant contamination from other belief systems. This concern for doctrinal purity and distinct identity became increasingly important as both Judaism and Christianity defined themselves against other religions. Over time, as Rabbinic Judaism developed its own canon, it largely rejected texts like Enoch that weren't part of the established Hebrew Bible. Similarly, early Christian councils, like the Council of Laodicea in the 4th century, and later councils, debated and eventually formalized the Christian biblical canon. In this process, many texts, including Enoch, were left out. The reasons varied. Some were deemed apocryphal, others not widely accepted, and some, like Enoch, were simply too problematic in terms of their theology or authenticity. It wasn't always a deliberate suppression, but more of a gradual sifting process where texts deemed less central, less authentic, or more controversial were naturally excluded in favor of those that better fit the developing theological framework of the time. The book simply didn't make the cut for what was considered the official, divinely inspired word. The Book of Enoch, despite its absence from most modern Bibles, has never truly faded away. Its story of fallen angels, cosmic journeys, and divine judgment continues to hold a strange and powerful grip on the human imagination. This enduring fascination isn't hard to understand. The book offers a narrative that is both epic and intimate, filling in gaps that the canonical scriptures leave tantalizingly open. It provides a detailed, almost cinematic account of the world before the Great Flood, a time shrouded in mystery, where angels walked among men and giants roamed the earth. For many, it offers a more complete picture of spiritual warfare and the origins of evil, a framework that resonates deeply with timeless questions about good and bad, creation and destruction. It speaks to a primal human curiosity about what lies beyond our immediate perception, about the unseen forces that shape our reality. Beyond its theological implications, the Book of Enoch has carved out a significant niche in the broader landscape of art, literature, and popular culture. Its vivid imagery of watchers descending from the heavens, their unnatural offspring, and Enoch's journeys through celestial realms has provided fertile ground for countless creative works. You can see its echoes in fantasy literature, where narratives of ancient races, powerful magical beings, and cosmic battles often draw inspiration from Enochian themes. The concept of fallen angels, once a specific theological point, has become a staple of modern mythology, appearing in everything from novels and video games to movies and television series. Think of stories involving angels rebelling against a divine order or ancient evils lurking in the shadows. Many of these tropes can trace their lineage, at least in part, back to the dramatic narratives laid out in the Book of Enoch. Its influence extends into demonology, providing names and hierarchies for demonic entities that have found their way into various occult traditions and popular horror stories. Even in cultural interpretations of angels and demons, the Book of Enoch offers a richness and complexity that goes beyond simpler biblical descriptions, painting a picture of a universe teeming with distinct angelic classes and a clear, defined struggle between heavenly and rebellious forces. It has provided a blueprint for understanding the supernatural world that extends far beyond its initial religious context. In conclusion, the Book of Enoch stands as a remarkable testament to the diversity and depth of ancient religious thought. It's more than just a forgotten text. It's a window into the spiritual landscape of a bygone era, reflecting the fears, hopes, and cosmic understandings of the people who wrote and cherished it. Whether you view it as sacred scripture, a powerful piece of ancient literature, or simply a fascinating historical artifact, its narrative force is undeniable. It challenges our conventional understanding of the divine, pushing the boundaries of what we consider possible within religious frameworks. It also reminds us that the human search for meaning, for understanding the origins of evil, and for knowledge of the cosmos is an ancient and ongoing quest. The untold stories within its pages continue to shape our world, often in subtle ways we might not even recognize. It forces us to confront the idea that there might be more to our spiritual heritage than what is commonly accepted, more narratives that were once central but have since been relegated to the sidelines. The Book of Enoch, with its blend of prophecy, cosmology, and epic storytelling, remains a powerful narrative that continues to provoke thought and discussion among scholars, theologians, and curious minds alike. It asks us to consider the vastness of the universe, the complexity of divine justice, and the enduring struggle between light and darkness. It invites us to peer into a world where the veil between heaven and earth was thinner, where angels interacted directly with humanity, and where the consequences of such interactions shaped the very course of history. So, as we reflect on this ancient text, a final question lingers. What secrets do you believe it still holds? What further insights might it offer into the nature of reality, the origins of good and evil, or the mysteries that continue to perplex humanity? Its exclusion from the canon doesn't diminish its power, but perhaps in some ways enhances it, allowing it to exist as a wild, untamed voice from antiquity, free from the constraints of dogma. It encourages us to look beyond the familiar, to question established narratives, and to seek out the hidden depths of spiritual tradition. We hope this journey through the Book of Enoch has sparked your curiosity and offered a fresh perspective on this extraordinary and often overlooked ancient text. If you found this exploration as fascinating as we did, please consider diving deeper into the book yourself. There's a whole universe waiting to be discovered within its pages. We encourage you to share your thoughts in the comments below. What aspects of Enoch's story resonate most with you? Do you believe it should be part of the biblical canon? And what other ancient mysteries would you like us to explore? Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel for more explorations into ancient mysteries and forgotten histories, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next deep dive. Your engagement helps us bring these incredible stories to life. Thank you for joining us on this journey.